Lately I've been slipping back, heading south, car sick on a Tuesday, missing cash, blacking out, heartless in a few ways.
Hey guys, it's Grim. Today I'm going to talk to you about my favorite ability in the game, which is Shadow Image. Shadow Image is a Nightblade skill from the Shadow Tree, and it allows you to place down a shade and then poof back to it, or teleport back to it uh, within a certain range. It's one of my favorite abilities in the game, and it allows you to escape the crazy situations that you really shouldn't be able to and that would be fatal to any other class. Um, and it really gives you the potential to take your kiting game and essentially your 1vx game to a whole different level. Um, and it's one of the only single abilities in the game that can completely alter your playstyle. There's nothing like it. Every class may have a gap closer or access to certain buffs, but only Shadow Image is a true teleport escape. The Psijic is a one-time use type of thing, and so it doesn't quite count. It doesn't work the same way. So Shadow Image is incredibly fun. I'm going to give you a few rules for it, a few tips for it, and then I'll show you some gameplay. So first of all, Shadow Image grants you the Shadow passives, which is really great. The ones that I think of the most are Dark Vigor, which increases your max health by 3%. Normally people will run one or two shadow abilities on each bar. On my back bar, for instance, I have Shadow Image and Shadow Disguise. And on my front bar, I'll have Surprise Attack, and a lot of people will also have Fear on their front bar. So that can give you 6% health on both bars, which is really nice. And then the most interesting thing is Shadow Barrier. And what's really great about Shadow Image and Shadow Barrier is that you get Shadow Barrier when you put down your shade, and then you also refresh the buff when you poof back to your shade. This is really interesting for me, I think, because it doesn't cost any magicka to poof back to your shade, and yet it refreshes that buff because it counts as activating the ability. So that's something cool to keep in mind. A couple of rules really quickly is that Shadow Image will work while you're jumping, but it won't work while you're falling. This is because you can't cast abilities when you're falling, but if you're jumping, you can technically cast abilities. This is something to keep in mind if you're jumping off a tower and have other people, especially Nightblades, following you, because you can jump off of a tower, have them all follow you really tightly, then you can poof back to your shade, and they won't be able to until they've landed unless they've also jumped. So, something to keep in mind. Number two, if you cast Shadow ability or Shadow Image in the air, the shade will actually be placed near to the last place you were standing, which means that if you jump off of a tower, for instance, and then cast Shadow Image while you're in the air, you'll still be able to poof back up to the tower, which is pretty cool. You can trick a lot of people that way because they'll think, oh, he didn't put down a Shadow Image. Let's all jump after him. But you can put it down in the air if you've jumped, not if you're falling. So that's really important to know. Number three is that it can be used to dodge the secondary effects of most gap closers. So, for example, Stampede will snare you, but if you use your Shadow Image, if you poof back to your shade, even if Stampede hits you and does the damage, it won't snare you if you've poofed back to your shade. So that's probably a bug, but that's how it is. Also true of Ambush. You don't get stunned if you poof back to your shade. So that's pretty interesting. Number four, just one thing to keep in mind really, less than a rule, is that Shadow Image is not a substitute for effective kiting. It's an augmentation. So use it to enhance your kiting, but don't use it to replace. If you think only with Shadow Image, you're gonna die anyways, and people are gonna see through your linear thought process. So try and be good at kiting before you use Shadow Image, and then use Shadow Image to enhance what your kiting abilities are. Now I also have four kind of tips and tricks for using Shadow Image. First of all, cliffs, ledges, and towers are your friend. They make you really hard to follow. If you put down your Shadow Image and then jump off, very few people are going to be able to keep up with you. Say you're being chased by 6 people, you jump off a tower, and they know that you're going to be poofing back up. Either they won't follow you and you're free to go, or 3 of them follow you and you poof back up and you've cut the fight in half. Now you're only fighting 3 of them up there, and the others have to walk all the way around the tower to get back in. And that works for cliffs and ledges, of course, too. It's just an additional safety net, and it's very nice. And you'll see me use that a lot. I always also recommend that people shade near lines of sight whenever possible, because if you poof back to a shade and then you're able to get behind a tree, it's going to make you that much harder to follow. It's just part of effective kiting is to use line of sight really effectively. So when you're thinking about where to put down your shadow image before a fight, put it down near line of sight, so that when you poof back to it, you can dodge behind a tree or a rock or a building really quickly. The third thing is to place it before you need it. Don't place it when you're in a panic, because you have to be able to poof back to it. So if you're putting it down next to the person you're fighting, it's not going to do very much for you. Put it in before you jump into a crazy situation, so that if things get really wild, you can poof back to it. So I'll put it down before I go for a res, or if I'm fighting 1 or 2 people, but I'm on the line. The line being these connecting lines between keeps where players travel through. If I'm on a line here or wherever, I will always put down a shadow image before I start a fight, so that I can poof to safety if I need to. And then the fourth thing that is good to keep in mind that a lot of people really don't, and this is kind of just you're overthinking it if this happens to you, and I've done it too, so I understand, but you don't always need to poof back to your shade. If you put down a shadow image and people are starting to catch on to you and they don't follow you around the corner, you're good. You can just cloak out. You don't need to poof back to your shade. If they're camping your shade, let them camp your shade and you just walk away. The great thing about the changes to shadow image are that if you're out of the range of the shadow image, poofing will actually put down a new one instead of porting you back. I was still in range, but so you can just walk away. You don't have to poof back to your shade. If you put down a shadow image, jump out of a tower, and no one follows you, just walk back up the tower, and don't give people the satisfaction of returning to your shade just to get zerged down. So, with all that being said, if there are other experienced users of shadow image listening and you have additional tips, please feel free to put them in the comments below. I really feel like I've learned a lot from reading these comments, and so I like to learn more, and I'm sure other people who are watching this would love more tips and tricks on how to use shadow image effectively. And with that said, let's move on to the gameplay.
Maybe I've been slipping back, heading south, car sick on a Tuesday, missing cash, blacking out, heartless in a few ways, shit for luck, elbow shredded, I held things steady like too late, please calm the fuck down, I'll do whatever you say, I get it, I'm living too hard and it's time that I stop it, go rising on up and then tumbling down, well it's part of the process, bar tabs on a hot night in a cold basement, you say I'm crazy, but I feel amazing, my mother told me that the world just got its plans. I wanna hold them till they burn right through my hands. Don't ask me questions, cause I'm tired of confessing, and I know that it's not much to say, but I swear that I'd like to change. I can't sleep, I hope I stay awake, cause I've been running quick, burning the wick at both ends. Screaming loud, stupid shit, scaring all of my old friends. Fell down on Bedford, hope that it's not broken. Safe to say, I might have had too much of some of these potions. I love you so much, I'm staying here all night. Don't wanna get up, I don't wanna stop, I don't wanna close my eyes. I'd rather not give a fuck and end up with some scars. The night's just long enough for me to build it all and let it fall apart. My mother told me that the world just got its plans. I wanna hold them till they burn right through my hands. Don't ask me questions, cause I'm tired of confessing. And I know that it's not much to say, but I swear that I'd like to change. I can't sleep, I hope I stayed awake, cause I've been running all day. I can't sleep. I can't
Go back and open it.
No! Well, the bright side is that I got away. The bummer part is I'm under the rock.
Again?
Again. This keeps happening! They'll never get me though. They'll never find me.
Unfortunate.
Guess what? The other one was also a slash stuck. What? It's on cooldown? Try again in 51 minutes?
Oh, man.